And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, 'cause I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Ow!
All right, this is Saturday, December 7th, and this is the second of two sessions on this first Saturday in December 2024, or the fourth month of this Islands of Sanity in a Mad World course. In case you're watching the recordings only version of this in sometime in the future. And so this second session really is, I had some grand plans that there would be primarily a focus on the book club choice of the moment in this year-long program, which we do have a new book, and we did, to some degree, focus on that in the first hour. But it's obvious to me that really the distinction between the 2 hours will grow less and less. They'll be blending together quite a bit as the months go on. So a reminder that the new book is At Work in the Ruins, a book by Dugald Hine. And so if you are a person who's engaging with this work with any kind of continuity, or whether even if you're not, I would recommend read the book or listen to it or whatever you do. We listened to a brief excerpt of a talk that Dugald Hine gave about At Work in the Ruins in the first session. So if you're coming in to this as your first session today, excuse me, I would request of you and suggest to you that you be sure to watch the first session as well. There was quite a lot of useful and also beautiful sharing and information and so on. Sorry. So this second session, we just had almost finished, the four of us that attended that first session, answering an inquiry for ourselves. What matters most to you? What matters most to you? And I'm asking that because that is one of the first inquiries or questions that I've found very, very useful if a person is sincerely engaging with this body of work. And this body of work is meant to map out over a model of approaching collapse awareness, collapse acceptance, and so on, called The Stages of Awareness, written by Paul Chafurka. And my experience is that as one progresses from the first to the second to the third and so on, stages of awareness, that at each level there's a deeper inquiry going on. There's a deeper possible expansion of experience of the interrelatedness of all things, of all people, of us and the web of life. And so this question of what matters most, just a brief reminder for the folks who were here before, and especially for the folks who are here now freshly, this inquiry is not meant to be the answer, and that's the end answer, and you won't be able to change it after you say it. In fact, it's the opposite. This is meant to be an invitation for you to start, if you haven't already, and I don't mean to assume that you haven't had this type of inquiry going on for years, but it is our suggestion here that you may want to take on doing journal work, perhaps for the rest of your life. I certainly have. And I can't imagine a more important time in the history of humanity to be doing some journaling to keep track of our experiences as we go through these layers of experience. And so I've set aside approximately 20 pages in the beginning of my journal, and it's meant to be ongoingly a refreshing and a re-looking at what matters most to me. Sometimes I'll add a sentence. Sometimes I'll add a page. Sometimes I'll add an image to a journal page. There's so many ways to be able to have this be a living document, if you will. So that's what this question is about. And what said that I would do is I would share my what matters most to me in this moment. And I specifically did not think about it for a second during the break. And because I really wanted myself to be fresh in it. And I am, and I'm a little nervous actually. I'm starting to get some of the feeling of trepidation, like as much as I've just said, this is a living document, there's some part of me that just is nervous. Am I going to say it all? Is it what if I forget something? Or perhaps you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm just slowing down, and I'm sorry for the folks who have just arrived. I think we really just need to boogie right into the motion here, and I hope you'll forgive me to not set aside a specific check-in time. Perhaps that can happen after I complete this little piece. I would, well, if it's important to you, if you have stuff that you'd really like to bring as a check-in, you are so welcome. And there will be moments in this hour in which that could happen for sure. So what matters most to me right now and today? What matters most to me is my relatedness with you, with people in my life, what matters most to me is the vivid experiences that I had in my teenage years that connected me directly with the beyond human populations. And it was so, I've not found a more pure expression of life communication resonant between beings as those expressions, those communications, those resonances with beyond human and non-corporeal life forms back in those teenage years. What matters most to me is the core resonance that I'm talking about, that is sometimes called the implicit, and I often demonstrate where that is by moving my hand this way, top of my neck down to my perineum, and to be able to resonate with life, with other human beings, with other beyond human beings, is the most nourishing, fulfilling, inspiring experience I know. And so that in some way is a part of what matters most to me. And to experience that and to share that with others is one aspect of what matters most to me. Um, I think that's it for this particular moment of this alive document. So, Sumitra, I know you're going to be needing to leave fairly soon. I'm curious if there's anything that you would like to just say to get here, and also noticing a continuity from the first hour to into now. Is there anything that you would just like to express in that way, in the name of that continuity? There's no pressure, just a opportunity if you'd like.
Yeah.
Gosh, nothing's coming to me, but thank you for sharing and sharing what's important to you, Dean. Just know I got you, and I'll check in tomorrow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Are you checking out right now?
I think I have to,
Okay.
but I'll watch the video when I get home.
Okay. Great.
So
Hmm.
thank you so much.
Travels to you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So one piece we actually went over in some detail was the handoff from the first book in the first 3 months of this year-long program, Climate Cure from Jack Adam Weber, and also what's this new book? This At Work in the Ruins from Dugald Hine, and we also talked a little bit about the piece of writing that really made him and Paul Kingsnorth, his buddy, uh, made them quite famous in an odd kind of way, called the Dark Mountain Manifesto. And I will be posting a version of that, a copy of that in what is a resource Google Doc, which is basically manifestos, really significant writing of any dimension that I wanted to put into an accessible linked form for participants like ourselves, like the folks on the screen right now. And so I would invite you uh, to read that, to read Dark Mountain Manifesto. I think it's a brilliant piece of writing. And I would invite us all to be reading or listening to At Work in the Ruins, and we'll do that over 3 months. And in my experience, this is not a thick book. This is not a long book. So 3 months is we're going to be able to, in those 6 sessions that are implied in 3 months, we're going to be able to spend some time on whatever you'd like to spend time on with his writing. And um, we just watched about 8 minutes of a talk, which I will be posting in the course material. In fact, I think I may have already done so. Anyway, there are a couple of Dougal Hines speaking samples that will be posted in the course material, and I would recommend them highly. One is this speaking engagement at a kind of a new age festival, if you will, in Europe where he was a speaker. And there's a liveliness and there's an aliveness and there's a community-ness and a creativeness that I thoroughly enjoy in that particular talk, that particular clip. And he's done hundreds of the clips. So you have, you know, if you like, if you've got, you can do a deep dive with him anytime. The other clip that I'm going to be posting is by a filmmaker I deeply admire. She just has a simplicity and a potency in her choices as a filmmaker, which is almost always just interview material of various speakers about things that are important these days. And so her name is Katie Teague. And if you want more suggestions around Katie Teague, she's a little difficult to find on YouTube because she doesn't use her name much in her own posting of media. So if you decide, oh yeah, I like her style, I like how she does it, and you can just ask me and I can send you some names and links of other interviews and so on. So I'd like to also invite us to spend just a few minutes looking back on our experience of Jack Adam Weber's Climate Cure book. And I'd like to invite you to join me in what I call my neighborhood. My neighborhood is just a way of saying the inner world and me showing you around how I process stuff and how I notice things and what I bump into is hairball nasty stuff or difficult stuff, how I handle problems and how I process and how I love and how yeah. And I'm hoping that we each will show us all around parts of our neighborhood together over our times together. What I'm also hoping is that in addition to these 2 one-hour sessions every 2 weeks, that you will, as it works for you, as you're called to do so, connect with other participants in this program and do some offline conversation, just connecting, just getting to know each other. And then maybe you would like to start doing some practices. And my promise to you is as these next few months move on, these next few weeks move on, I'm going to be posting more and more simple, basic practice sets that will, you watch a couple of 10-minute videos and you're pretty much set to do some of these basic, for instance, feeling body practices or sense making practices. I'm saying sense making with kind of a grin right now because in the last hour, and particularly in Dougald Hines' clip, he outlined quite brilliantly how sense making in the form of the business as usual world we're all saturated in, sense making in that domain, in that framing, is just more of the same. There's no way it can promise anything other than more of the same. So his challenge in the subtext there is how do we do sense making in an entirely different framing, in an entirely different relatedness with each other, with the planet, and so on. It's quite a challenge. I think it really calls on us, my experience for myself, and I would be so curious if you would share, especially if you have a different way of orienting yourself to sense making. When I look at the Jack Adam Weber material, I notice that there is a tremendous amount of his Chinese medicine expertise involved there and his practice over years with patients and so on, and his passing on of various ways of self-regulating, meaning being able to bring ourselves back to center, co-regulating, how we can encourage each other to come back to center when we're knocked off. He also brings in a number of very valuable distinctions about a word that, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's very common yet, but perhaps more common now than it was 10 years ago, which is titrating our process work. How much of my grief am I able to bite off and truly digest or chew or process in a good way? It's clear that there are some chunks of my experience, for instance, of grief that are too large. I literally need to compartmentalize and consciously set aside because it's too big given what I've got on my plate in life right now. And that is actually a true statement. That's not just me giving you an example. For instance, what's going on in Gaza, I I don't have any room for that mammoth issue of grief and anger in my system and fear in my system. I can take a tiny nibble at a time, and I know that it'll be a while before I can do more. I've already offered in a couple of other of our spaces, and this one now. If you'd like to have a grief ritual on one of our Saturdays or something a bit longer, perhaps on a Sunday, I would be more than happy to do that. And I will be putting out suggestions, but really, you are just as much able to suggest, request, let's do this thing. Let's spend some extra time on titrating, on processing, on metabolizing some of these very difficult emotions that perhaps are at a scale that's too large for any of us in daily life. So please know that you are welcome to request, suggest. Yeah. So what I'm bringing up about the Jack Adam Weber book is I I noticed that there was precious little feedback about that book, um, and minimal engagement in the conversation, I would judge. And I don't mean to say this in any kind of a judgment way from me to you, or to me to us. What I am noticing is after 10 years of working in this field of offering resources and practices to people in the collapse-aware and collapse-acceptant communities, is that that kind of knowledge at what I would call the first aid level of resilience skills, that basic level of self-regulation, co-regulation, and other practices that have some way of shoring up our systems or our experience or our sensations or our emotions in such a way that we might be able to expand our capacities. It's been a tough sell for 10 years, a very tough sell. What I've noticed, and I've noticed it in my experience as well, in my own processing, I first I've got to say I'm weird this way. I actually, as soon as I started researching for my book, I wanted to find out who's offering this kind of, I didn't know at the time, resilience skills. I didn't know at the time it was called co-regulation or self-regulation. I just knew I needed tools so that I could feel whole. I could feel like I could come home in myself. I could have an embodied experience rather than just checking out or disassociating or drinking too many beers or whatever the heck it is. So I know that it is a very common experience for many people to really not, I mean, I don't want to say it rough, but to not really give a shit. I mean, until it's real, like like the firestorm that happened here 5 years ago. Um, we just didn't think about that stuff, and nobody really wanted to talk about co-regulation, self-regulation. It was just like, why are we talking about that? Who gives a shit? All of a sudden, that and the ability to access, start to titrate our grief. I led a number of grief groups after that firestorm, and people in their own way often described, yeah, I do need these skills. I do. And it is so good to be here with others who are seeing that too. And figuratively, we were kind of holding each other's hands on the Zoom call, just really being with that vulnerability. Like, oh God, I really need this. And I didn't know that I needed this. So, Richard, I see your hand up, and thank you so much for just listening to that segment. And what do you got?
Well, you're asking about people's feedback about uh, Jack's book, and and now getting into a new one. And I just got to say, for me, I am having the double of a time reading all the way through any book right now. I mean, anything, novel, doesn't matter, any book. I mean, any lengthy written material, I just can't read right now. It's very curious. I mean, I've never been this way in my life. But right now, I can read little articles and I can read even slightly longer articles, but books with lots of chapters and all that, it's like, forget it.
Yes.
So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying anybody else should, react a certain way, but that's what's happening for me.
Yes.
So, like, for instance, like this morning, I had some things I needed to do, and I'm participating in this and other groups with you guys. So I decided not to go to the book group, partially because I don't have the book and I'm not reading the book. So, and I probably won't. So I'm just letting you guys know that it's not because I want to ignore what you guys are talking about, or that I think the themes are unimportant or anything like that. It's just I haven't been able to get past this particular block or barrier or whatever it is that
Yeah.
can't focus for long periods of time on one book. It's very curious. So that's just me.
Yeah. Richard, I thank you so much for just saying it like it is for you. I put that directly into my experience in the file called Fire Hose to the Face.
Okay.
I've got to tone it way back to a drip,
Hmm.
even if it's great, even if it's fantastic writing about what I really want to know. I hear you.
Yeah.
I absolutely honor that. And if I may, I mean no pressure. You please make your choices and do what you do with your every
Mhm.
moment. But I want you to know what a difference it makes to have Melissa and Richard here, to have you here. It actually has almost nothing to do with whatever book we're looking at in this program. We're
Yeah, I
missing
agree.
you for half of our together
Yeah,
time, our circle time. We
right.
miss you.
Hmm.
So again, no pressure. Please make the choices you make, and I honor them absolutely.
Yeah.
But I want you to know I don't give a shit what the book is. I'm not here for the book either. I am
Yeah,
here to explore together, to share
yeah,
together. I can't wait till we're really more active in sharing with each other what are the practices, what are the ways in daily life that we bring
Mm.
ourselves back to a sense of home in ourselves. I can tell you I've been knocked further off center in the past 48 hours than I can remember in years.
Mm.
And it is, I'm digging deep into my reserve, my well of the most basic first aid level resilience skills, the self-regulation. Oh my God. And what matters the most to me at this particular juncture is to be able to be on this screen with you. This is as close to a functioning circle as I've got anywhere at this level.
Mm.
There are
Yeah.
some that are kind of close, but they're very irregular here where I live. I
Mhm.
plan on making them a regular thing as soon as I can, and it might be months before it's really functioning. So the beating heart of this is not the book, and it's not my swell content in this second hour. I got some pretty good content. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But what matters most is that we are coming together in real time and we're generating an experience of coherence, first in our own
Mm.
bodies, in our own systems, and then rippling that out into this, what could be called an embrace. In fact, I would like to suggest that we very soon start to visit the every other week USA timed wider embraces
Mm.
guided meditation. It's every other week. It's from the UK. They schedule it just so it'll work for folks in the USA. And it is
Mm.
one of the most potent introductions to experiential introductions to the experience of the energy body that I've ever experienced. It is the most gentle guided meditation, yet it is an exquisite. I have never experienced it with a bunch of new people, new faces. Never ceases to amaze me how even the newest person will share at the end. I experienced this expansion of my presence, and I could feel you all in the same larger presence, and so on. I don't want to get down a rabbit hole about that,
Mm.
but please, if I can leave you with one message, it's that what matters here is your presence.
Right.
And if you're not here and if you're watching the recordings, if you're inclined, you could post something as a response to the video or go into the chat space that we have. We have a private chat space and just stay connected. Maybe set up an offline get together with a buddy on a regular basis. So enough. I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting now, and I didn't mean to do that. Richard, you got something else?
Well, this is related. Yeah, I mean, some of these short form things, whether it's written or videos or YouTube things or whatever, some of those are really incredible. Like I just watched, and I really recommend everybody watch this one. It's really intense and it's amazing. I think it's from the second session of last month. I'm catching up. I'm still in last month, but I watched this one from a 5 minute YouTube video from Caitlin Johnstone, I think the name is.
Mm-hmm.
Caitlin Johnstone. I guess this person is a war reporter or is, reporting on, all kinds of catastrophes and chaotic situations all around the world. And it's an incredible video. I mean, this person, it sounded like a guy talking to me, but
Yep, it
um,
is.
anyway, somebody was like relaying her messages about this, about how does she cope with this? I mean, how does she deal with all the horror and all the pain and suffering that she's witnessing all the time? And she goes through this amazing description of what she does in her own body and how she deals with it.
Yes.
And, and the thing that I want to touch on right now, I mean, I would love to explore this more with you guys in this group. She talks about the incredible beauty in the horror and
Mm-hmm.
in all these really painful situations and in all the suffering, all the chaos, seeing the beauty in it all. And she talks about that a lot. And I think I might experience that like 1% of the time. And the rest of the time, I don't see the beauty and the horror and the pain and the suffering and all that. I think that's a pretty amazing state of consciousness. So that's
Yes.
something I think we would be worth exploring, you know.
Yes. I so appreciate you bringing that up and that
Mm,
particular clip up.
it's
And
incredible.
I could just suggest that perhaps anybody who watches that video, which is Caitlin Johnstone's spouse,
Ah,
reading that on YouTube,
yeah,
that that is exactly what I'm pointing to when I describe the implicit, when I go like this
yeah,
resonance of the allness, of the unity, of the interbeing, of love,
right.
scale that is beyond, it is truly ineffable. And she is brilliant in her expression.
Yeah,
So I hope you
definitely.
can now get whatever your version is, whatever words you use to describe when you get into that expanded, expansive state. I hope you can understand that's why I included that Caitlin Johnstone
Hmm.
clip, because I
Yeah,
think she beautifully
yeah.
expresses what I'm trying to convey whenever I'm talking about the implicit. How about if we just take a moment, a few moments, maybe the rest of this time, could could each of us just dip a toe in the water of sharing a bit of what Richard's describing, whether you've read Caitlin Johnstone or not, but you got a sense, how do we access an innate beauty, even in the most horrific circumstances?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is there anyone who would like to share anything that you're stirred to share from your own experience about that neighborhood?
Well, I'll just say I feel like I can kind of tiptoe around the edges of that place and kind of dip my toes in the water a little bit of, I would call it like this universal love, really, universal acceptance or love. And I can dip my toes in the water and get a sense of that sometimes, but I find it really hard with some of these more negative manifestations of human behavior and things people are doing to each other in this world is it's hard to see that as beautiful, and yet on some level it's all part of the oneness and it's all part of our reality. I still don't see it as beautiful though most of the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Gee, ask me a hard question.
Good.
Oh boy.
I could just say a few things. Uh, yeah, being in the presence of something that's very hard, and usually it involves other people, but sometimes it involves animals that are in trouble, that sort of thing. But I guess it could be called beautiful, but to stay open to the experience, there's a certain amount of oneness with what's happening, which could be called beautiful. But for me as a human being, I really totally flawed, and when I feel those kinds of things, I am kind of amazed by it. I've been practicing basic meditation for quite a while now, and that has helped because generally, you know, in the past, I just try to get away from it or go somewhere else mentally, maybe that was beautiful, you know, maybe take some drugs and then I'd see something beautiful. But it would be sort of separate from what is really happening so that, you know, I try to get away from what's happening and not not trying to run away from it, but maybe even do something helpful, you know, in my old age that you know, this is an ideal for me and I know for others. So that's all I have to say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Allison, would you like to say anything, or shall we move on?
Well,
And
these
excuse
are
me, and Janet, I mean to be including you as well.
these are very profound questions that you're asking that, you know, given more time, I probably could be more articulate, but in the moment, at least for me in my life, my life has been very difficult. So I've always had to look at the world with like, you know, with like two visions. So what was happening to me personally didn't ever negate the beauty of the world that I was looking at. So I could be in a horrific situation and I could still easily see the magnificence of the planet and I could appreciate it. I mean, it's not a mutually exclusive experience. And so the world is always here. We are on it. And I don't think there's any place on the planet, like it's all different, but it's all magnificent. So even when you're suffering, you can look outside and see that there's beauty and God and the world, and you can appreciate it because on some level, you know, you've got to admit you're a human being. You're not going to be here forever. Life isn't perfect. This is a really tough place, planet Earth. So just being able to absorb the beauty of our surroundings is sort of like medicine. And like, you know, and I think Americans, I don't know about other cultures, but I think Americans take a lot of things for granted, don't appreciate what we have, and which is the problem. But there's always grace, there's always beauty, and it's always available. It's a never-ending flow of magnificence. And it's just, you know, it's just a shame our culture's devolved into this end stage capitalistic, consumeristic insanity.
Hmm.
But I don't live like that. So I'm all like, no matter what I'm going through, I always see the planet. I always feel it. I'm always grateful. And I think everybody can do that. They just, you know, spirituality is something that's been sucked out of the culture. So, you know, we have to teach each other how to re-engage in something that's more meaningful than, you know, buying a 64-inch TV.
Yeah,
Thanks, Allison.
sure.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Janet, I'm curious if you would like to chime in some way.
I'm sorry. That is definitely a big question, and I think actually it's one of the struggles is how to face, not even how to face, how to be in the presence of horror. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about that because I'm trying to figure it out.
Hmm.
So Sorry. Ugh.
No, sorry. Thank you so much. We are where we are every moment. And there is no sorry about any of it. So I appreciate all y'all engaging with these, admittedly massive inquiries that never have an end to them. There's no obviously right answer. There's no way to sum it up in some super articulate way. Even Caitlin Johnstone, maybe she comes a whole lot closer than I do, but there's no end to that inquiry because that's just what life is. So, in an odd way, both of these sessions today have ended up being kind of a preliminary layout of the whole rest of our time together, depending on how long you stay engaged with this work, with this particular course. These practices or resources that we might share with one another and engage with, mine will likely be different than yours. But in fact, what matters most to me will most likely be different than what matters most to you. But the beauty that we were just talking about is that we can still sit in circle with one another, still share from our own experience into the circle. We can still generously, excuse me, we can still generously hold space for one another, especially in the times when we're experiencing things that are larger than what our particular system can handle. There's nothing quite like being held when what life is pushing at you is larger than what you can handle. I'll speak for myself. That's very much my experience of being in these two sessions today. Because again, I've experienced moments and incidents in this past 48 hours that are far larger than anything I've had to personally encounter or much less titrate than these incidents have been more than my innate capacity can hold. So I've had to intentionally compartmentalize and titrate and just work it as best I can when I'm alone. And then I have this gorgeous gift of being able to come into this circle where I feel a far larger capacity just by who we are together in this coherent space. I hope that's communicating. That's where we're headed. And I would just invite us all to stay open to what it is that most connects us with our own center, with our own sense of home, that we might bring that to the circle with each other. And also, of course, to your own loved ones, to the other people in your life. That's why we're doing this. And Richard, again, I just really appreciate you putting a fine point on it by sharing your experience of Caitlin Johnstone's piece. And I hope the rest of us will go back a month. I think it is a month or so ago, when she posted that, and I then posted it in our course materials, it's a worthy piece. It's easy to find.
Yeah. So
The
short too. It's like 5 minutes. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. A lot of hers are really
Incredible.
short these days,
Incredible.
which is pretty good for us, those of us who are fire hose avoidant.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this may not seem like the big changes and transition of this particular coursework that I warned of when we opened up the first session, and then mentioned a little bit in this opening of the second session. But in my experience, this is a big, big difference. And there's one last piece that I would like to invite you all to check out. I will soon be posting it as a part of actually, it'll be a separate part right next to the December course materials.
Hmm.
And it's called the Meditation and Implicit Senses Training, or MIST.
Hmm. Hmm.
I made it as simple and as clear as I possibly can. It's basically a tour through my starting with meditation in my teenage years, and it was very, very difficult for me to do simple vipassana or some of the basic mindfulness techniques. I just was so fidgety, I couldn't do it. And I struggled. I really gave it my best shot for a couple of years. And then somebody told me that I could start to adapt my own meditation.
Right.
And over the next 20, 25 years, I brought in a whole lot of different pieces, including substantial energy body elements. I'm not suggesting that you have to learn about the energy body if that's somehow unusual or distasteful for you. It's fine to just let that go. But I'm hoping that you will find these elements to be quite nourishing, coherent, center reclaiming. And it starts with simple sitting in silence. And you're going to see that each of the 4 different kinds of meditation actually offer a number of different meditations, but in the 4 central ones, including simple stillness, there's a download. If you want to have an audio download after simple stillness, which has a bell at the beginning and a bell at the end, after that, each of them has a particular kind of music that I have found very useful. You don't have to listen to that music. It's just a suggestion. I will be speaking more about it in the weeks and months to come. If this is not your time to integrate another meditation thing or another thing of any kind, I understand. But what I do suggest, if you have the space to give it a shot, please give it a solid shot. Meaning, with a simple stillness, you may be very, very clear and experienced in that realm. So maybe just doing it this way for a couple of days, there you go. The next level is coherence. And that could not be simpler either, which is, you'll find out, is just laying down, if at all possible, laying down in a cozy space and playing the music for 15 minutes or a half an hour. I'd be very curious to hear if you have uh, anything to share after trying out this coherence meditation. And the third one and final one, by the way, all of this is in a little booklet that is right there with the downloads of the audios.
Hmm.
The little booklet You'll be able to just click on it, read it. It is not a big old book. It is just a booklet. And the final meditation that I think primarily failed to convey to people my experience, and to invite them in a way that was welcoming and interesting to people. I've had very little response and interest in this particular meditation, and I would recommend give it a shot. I'm going to leave it at that for now because, it's a slow but sure kind of dip your toe in the water and check it out process. I would be thrilled if you have any questions about that missed training, the meditation and implicit senses training. If there's anything I can offer in terms of making something clearer or finding alternatives if some part of it is uncomfortable or, that sort of thing, I am more than happy to help y'all with that. So enough about me. Thank you very much for hearing those minutes of what is a fairly large chunk of difference and of active potential practices, if you wish. What I'd like to ask now, is there anybody who has an absolutely hard stop? Yes, you do, Janet. Would you, Janet, be willing to just take 1 minute and complete with us by just telling us what you're landing with after our time together today?
Sorry. Lots to think about. How to navigate, I think, moment by moment, which is kind of how it feels. So sorry, I'm getting sicker. So
yeah,
have a I don't know, a good rest of your weekend.
Great.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Hope you heal soon.
Thanks, Janet.
Bye.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to just check out a little bit of what you're landing with?
Hi, I'll do it. I know it's. Are we here just till 11:30?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. It's great to meditate about what's the most important to me. It really is a very good thing to look at and question, because the other things about how difficult life can be and being in horrible or even just frustrating situations that I used to respond to very like reflexively, and that didn't work very well. So it's great to come and just talk about these things, because hardly ever do conversations with friends or in a get-together ever get to this point where you're actually talking about it. So, and in meditating upon it, there is a lot of information out there, and I'm concentrating on some information that I'm really interested in. I'm brainwashing myself, kind of. I mean, I feel like that. If I can just, take into myself the realities, I think some of these books really help. But William Catton's book I guess it was published in 1980, about ecology. I mean, I was always so interested in that, in biology, but I never put it together, of course. Someone that long ago, and then the Limits to Growth, put it together. And then there's William Rees, who's doing the same thing. I mean, he basically just gives you the logic. I mean, if you talk about sense making, that man makes sense. And so I'm pretty much doing that because my brain just, anyway. And so what you're doing, Dean, is very helpful too, is to just try to look at it, whatever it is, without going crazy. That's so. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. I guess I'll go. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I got a essay I got an email with an essay in it by, I think it's Charles Eisenstein. You guys familiar with him?
Mhm.
He's kind of like this interesting guy. I mean, he's sort of a philosopher, and he decided instead of having a regular job, he was just going to do his philosophizing and seek out patrons basically to help him, survive and pay for his room and board, so to speak. And he's been real successful at that. But anyway, he wrote an essay about how to titrate or defend ourselves to some degree against this onslaught of information and, videos and the internet and social media and all this stuff and all the news. And I haven't read the essay yet, but that is something I'm really considering because I can't take in all this stuff all the time. It's just way too heavy and way too much. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what he talked about. He talked about a news diet.
Mhm.
That's what he called it, a news diet. And like I said, I haven't read it yet, but I am going to read that, and I'm considering how I want to proceed with this because I certainly want to know what's going on and I want to keep up with things, but especially with Trump coming into office, I mean, the barrage, I would call it a barrage of nonstop, insane, utterly bizarre news is just crazy making. It's just overwhelming. So I need to find a way to deal with it. So that's one of the things I'm thinking about, and we kind of touched on that a little bit here, and somehow finding beauty in this latest iteration of Trump 2.0. That's a big challenge for me to find some
Mhm.
beauty in that. It's hard for me to see that right now. Um, so no, I think that's a great question to consider, which we've been doing during this hour. And I don't have any good answers either, but good thing to look at, to consider.
Mhm.
That's it for me.
Yeah, Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Welcome.
So my turn. I'm really excited about reading this book, At Work in the Runes.
Mhm.
I like the title. It makes sense. I think we're all going to be excavating that concept because I think in order to survive, we're going to have to figure that out because that's what we're facing.
Yeah.
And I completely understand, Richard, when you say you can't read whole books. It's like I used to be able to plow through a book, and it's like there's so much external noise that it's overwhelming. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and the insanity is only going to get bigger. So so we have to help each other, I think, and try and
Yeah.
figure out a way like to go through this
Yep.
with as much
Hmm.
positivity as we can. I do not want Trump to get my nervous system again for the next 4 years.
Mm.
He got 4 years of mine. He can't have it again. But I think asking these enormous existential questions, Dean, is overwhelming and fun at the same time, because it's an exercise that if we can nail it down, I think it'll be like guideposts to get us moving forward. And
Yeah.
if you ask yourself, like, what's the most important thing to me? I mean, obviously it's going to change all the time, but we need something to hold on to. And when we're not together, like I'm alone. So when I'm alone, you need something to anchor you, to not get hysterical, or some breaking news that you see just like fries your brain.
Yeah.
So it's really great to reflect on what is really important. What are we doing here? What are we supposed to help with? It could be really simple. It's just there was that Chinese proverb, chop wood, carry water. Life
Yep.
shouldn't be that complicated. We just, you know, it we've made it ridiculously complicated in this culture. So maybe we can back off from this. Maybe not.
Yep.
Thanks, Allison.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dean.
Yeah. I so appreciate y'all being here for either one or both of the sessions. Please know how warmly and sincerely invited you are to come to both sessions, having absolutely nothing to do
Yeah.
with any given book.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And I will be putting out some more updates soon.
Hmm.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good. Appreciate
Bye.
And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, 'cause I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Ow!